History is so boring. Wrong. History is exciting, and I'm going to prove that to you today. Today I'm going to talk to you about the 26th President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. If we didn't have a term alpha male, it would have been made just for Theodore Roosevelt. He started off as a sickly child, had a lot of childhood illnesses, even asthma, and he thought the solution to that was strenuous exercise and outdoor activities. And for old Teddy Roosevelt, it seemed to work. Now, when he was a young man, he went to college, so some people just know him as the president, but he went to Harvard University and he graduated magna cum laude, so he was also a scholar. Well, when Teddy Roosevelt had his first wife, as a young man, his wife died and his mother died on the same day. He was heartbroken, didn't know what to do, so he packed up, moved out west, and said, I want to be a cowboy and do cowboy stuff. So after doing that and kind of getting some of that out of his system, goes back in the New York area, and he becomes a police commissioner. So not just a beat cop, but he rises to the rank of commissioner. So, man, if Teddy Roosevelt saw a problem, he took care of it himself. So as police commissioner, he heard that some of the police officers in New York City were taking bribes, were cohorting with prostitutes. So as the commissioner, he went undercover himself to investigate all these issues. And when he found a cop that was on the take, Theodore busted him up himself, gave him an old knuckle sandwich before he dragged him in, and then had brought charges against him. Well, in addition to being a hard-knuckled police commissioner, he rose up to become the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, which is a very high position in the Department of War, Department of Defense. As the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, he used some of his scholarly research ability, and he wrote the book, The Naval War of 1812. And that book is still looked at today in naval academies on how you fight naval warfare. Well, not just to be a scholarly guy, when the Spanish-American War broke out, he actually resigned his position as Assistant Secretary of the Navy so that he could form his own regiment and get into the fighting hand-to-hand himself. So Theodore Roosevelt formed the Rough Riders, and it was a cavalry regiment because he thought, man, cavalry is the ultimate manly art of war. So he forms a regiment, goes to Cuba to fight, and it takes a while with the shipping. It takes a while to actually get all their equipment, including their horses, for the cavalry regiment. Well, Theodore Roosevelt didn't want to wait for the horses, so he led a cavalry charge without cavalry. I mean, he didn't wait for the horses. He just had the cavalry guys rush up the hill and take it in the Battle of San Juan Hill. He led them in such a heroic manner that Theodore Roosevelt actually won the Medal of Honor. Very rare for a president to have that kind of military success and to win the Medal of Honor. So you may think that Theodore Roosevelt was just a fighter. That's all he knew how to do. Well, that's not true. He also knew how to make peace. In fact, when the Russians and the Japanese were fighting in the Russo-Japanese War, Teddy Roosevelt got him to stop. He negotiated the peace settlement to two ferocious countries fighting each other, and for that act, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So far we've got a president that won the Medal of Honor and the Nobel Peace Prize. So you may be wondering, well, what did he do when he was off duty as a president? Well, you know that a lot of presidents have some entertainment built into the White House. Sometimes one of them had a bowling alley put in. One brought a movie theater. You know what Teddy Roosevelt put in? A boxing ring. And he even invited professional boxings to come to the White House so he could fight them himself, just for fun, to stay in good shape. Let me go back a minute and say the transportation took too long to get his horses there in the Battle of Cuba. So Teddy knew that transportation was a problem. So one of his other projects as president was overseeing the Panama Canal. So at first, the government tried to buy the land to dig the canal from Colombia. Colombia wouldn't sell it, so he supported rebels in Colombia who broke away from the country, formed their own country of Panama, and then dealt with them so we could get that canal built. because he knew that transportation was a big issue. Well, also after he was president, when he's end of his term, his replacement Taft became president. And initially, Theodore Roosevelt was a big Taft supporter. But when he thought that Taft wasn't doing and following Roosevelt's path, he said, I will oppose him. I'll run again myself. So he formed a new party called the Bull Moose Party. He said, yeah, I know Taft was one of my good friends. I supported him in the campaign, but he's not doing a job, so I'm going to have to electorally take him out. And in the Bull Moose Party, he went and gave a speech. Somebody came up and literally shot him right in the chest. Teddy Roosevelt pulled out a handkerchief, stuffed it in to stop the bleeding, and finished giving his speech. He talked for at least another half an hour, and he said, some bullet in the chest is not going to stop a member of the Bull Moose Party. It seemed like nothing could stop Teddy Roosevelt. In fact, when he finally died, he died in his sleep, and it said that if Teddy Roosevelt was awake, he would have gave death a run for his money. So when you think that history is boring, just think of the awesome life of Teddy Roosevelt.